Jason Heale is the Communications Director there at Maxim Institute, and he's got some well-researched thoughts on this issue. Jason, it is always a pleasure to chat with you. Good morning.
Morning, Di. Always good to be with you guys. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. I mean, first up, the question, should the government feed our children? Should we even be doing school lunches? Is that too big a question?
That's a big question to start off with. That's right. And I think that's the question that I want to get at in the column that I've written for Maxim this week, because our default in New Zealand is yes, right? Of course, the government should feed children. There's families that can't, they're hard off. The government needs to step in and look after them. And I think while that's the obvious answer, and that's the question we should be asking, because I think that the conversation around school lunches is the deliveries are late, the food's not nutritious, it's not getting eaten. In my research, I found out that even Michelle Obama, though, she started a school lunch program, and the lunches she provided didn't get eaten either. So it's not just a New Zealand problem.
Okay.
But I think the question that we have all those questions, but the deeper question is, should the government be providing lunches for our kids? And that's not to say, should our hungry kids be getting fed? That's not the question. Of course they should. The question is, who is best suited and equipped and accountable to provide those meals for them? And in my humble opinion, the bureaucracy from Wellington may not be the best way to feed hungry children in Invercargill or Whangarei or Gisborne or any of those places. I think that the answer is probably more in, as with most of the issues that families and communities face, the answer is a lot closer to home and close to that community.
So when you're talking about this then, are you talking about community groups? Are you talking about maraes? Are you talking about churches getting more involved here? I mean, this is kind of a new area for us, or it seems like a new area for us, because as New Zealanders, we didn't used to get school lunches. I see the need, and maybe there's always been that need, and maybe it's about time school lunches were provided. But are you saying that, perhaps it should be these community groups instead?
Yeah, that's right. Essentially, I think all of the above that you mentioned, maraes, charities, school, church groups, all of those local groups that are plugged into the community and have deep ties with each other and are able to work together to pull off something quite spectacular. I imagine when the local communities work together, they pull off miracles in many ways. And it would be great to see those groups empowered to do that. And you're right, it wasn't always like this. School lunches, I think, were only introduced maybe just over a decade ago and exploded since then. I remember one of the previous Labour government's promises was to increase school lunches, and it went from, I think, 50,000 to over 200,000 school lunches. So it's seen huge growth, and there is a need for that. But as we keep coming back to, is the government the best vehicle to provide that? And I think that there's a lack of accountability that you see, a lack of transparency when it comes to these things, and that just doesn't happen when you know the person you're dealing with face to face and you live in the same community as these people. So I think there's that as well.
I mean, I'm just wondering if this points to a larger discussion, again, not just, we're focusing in on school lunches, but is this a bigger discussion? Is it every time something comes up, we tend to go to the government and say, well, hey, this is your fault, this is your problem, it needs to be solved at this higher level. Is this just something that is a kind of new phenomenon that perhaps, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago, we didn't do so much?
Yeah, I think it's a feature of New Zealand culture in many ways, that slow government creep. So it hasn't been like this, you say 20, 30, 40 years ago, there wasn't school lunches, but there were other things all the way back to the 1890s. My research found that, in 1901, there was a French philosopher who described New Zealand politics as socialism without doctrine. That is just where the government kind of creeps into different areas arbitrarily, and they don't They don't have an overall vision, but they go, oh, there's something we could fix here. The big one is state housing. So after the Great Depression, the first Labour government started a big social housing program, and that kind of grew and that's like, could you ever see any government winding that back? Probably not. There would be big political problems with that. And then after the Second World War, government spending actually doubled. And what happens is that safety nets then become expectations for us. And so something starts off as, well, if everything else fails, the government is there to help you to get back on your feet. Whereas it becomes, I expect this is my right, the government needs to look after me. So there's been that creep for a while, and I think it is worthy of a wider discussion in other policy areas and other areas of where the government steps in, healthcare, housing, employment, those sort of things.
Yeah, because I was going to say it. Yeah, sorry, finish your sentence. Apologies.
How is the best way for those services to be delivered?
Because I was going to say, in a sense, the government helping out in situations where it is really dire doesn't seem like such a bad thing, but it perhaps, having some other expectations in there as well just might be helpful in terms of creating and cultivating a sense of a community and perhaps independence as well. So, I mean, this is a big question, and I don't believe we're going to solve it this morning. But, as we wrap things up, any sort of last thoughts on this one, and to where to from here? We're posing these questions, we're thinking about it. I mean, how do we move on this as a society?
I think it's not like a drastic cut. Like, I don't think we need to go the whole American DOGE, government Department of Government Efficiency route and just cut. I think it's gradual shifts where we slowly shift to support local solutions, where we go, how can the local community best handle this? Let's empower them. Let's resource them to do it. It doesn't mean the government should stop spending money on this, but maybe just defer it to local groups, help parents provide resources for families and things like that. If we're talking specifically about school lunches, you can provide families with resources, and then maybe redefine for us what a good outcome looks like. So I think that those are probably three things that we could do in the short term that would help with this.
Jason, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. But of course, people can find out more. You've written an article on this one, which people can check out. And I think that's really important. We've only just sort of touched on it, but hey, there's a lot more depth in there as well. So how do people find that if they want to perhaps delve into this a bit further?
It's going to be on our website, maxim.org.nz.
Awesome. Hey, have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. Thanks again.
Thanks, Di.
Thanks for joining us on Rhema. Now, if you found value in today's content, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to our channel with the subscribe button. This really helps us to continue to produce more quality content for you. And hey, if you'd like to stay updated and never miss any of our future videos, ring that notification bell as well. Don't forget to follow us on our other socials, which are in the description below. And until then, stay tuned.